solemn day of remembrance across the United States and here in Northern California. On this day, 22 years ago, thousands of people were killed in New York, Virginia, and Pennsylvania during terror attacks on this country. And today, Americans honored those who were lost in the attacks with the vow, we will never forget. Thank you for joining us on this 9/11. I'm Lisa Gonzalez. The nation's leaders and friends and families of the victims were at the sites of those attacks this morning to mark the moments when the attacks were carried out. The ceremony in New York City began with a bell ringing and that moment of silence. Bagpipes then began to play as an American flag was carried through the crowd. Vice President Kamala Harris, Senator Chuck Schumer, and former New York mayors Rudy Giuliani and Michael Bloomberg were all there in attendance. The program then moved to the reading of names, where people took turns reading the names of the victims of the attacks. At the Pentagon, other government leaders, family, and friends remembered those killed at that building. American Airlines Flight 77 was hijacked and crashed into the Pentagon. 64 people on the aircraft and 125 people at the Pentagon lost their lives that day. Each victim's name was read. And then this moment of silence observed. And Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin honored their memory.
It's our duty to live up to the goodness that they embody. And it's our duty to defend the democracy that they love so much. So we will always seek to meet that challenge. We will always strive to live up to their example and their memory.
And the name of every passenger and crew member on board United Flight 93 was read aloud in Shanksville. Passengers on the flight intervened as terrorists hijacked the plane. At today's ceremony, the heroism of the ordinary passengers and crew members was remembered.
Their actions unquestionably saved untold number of lives and preserved the U.S. Capitol, the symbol and the center of our democracy.
And these are their loved ones. They walk through the gates of the memorial to visit the crash site in that field.
Many who got trapped.
Former President George W. Bush held a moment of silence honoring the victims. This was that moment. He was at the George W. Bush Presidential Center in Dallas today. He spoke briefly, praying for those who lost their lives and thanked those who rescued victims. The Presidential Center houses artifacts from one of the towers along with videos and documents. It's the first time this moment of remembrance was open to the public. And today, Sacramento Regional firefighters are making a climb symbolizing some of the final steps of the hundreds of New York City firefighters who lost their lives that day. KCRA 3's Aaron Heft has the tribute.
Giving back one footstep at a time.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
Honoring the 343 firefighters who lost their lives in the attacks of September 11th. Today, firefighters from across the Sacramento region coming together 22 years later to climb 110 flights of stairs in honor of the fallen.
Everybody that was alive at the time remembers where they were in that moment. For me, I was swearing into the U.S. military. They stopped our ceremony halfway through. We came out, we watched the second plane hit. So it hits home dearly to me because that's what my introduction to the fire service was.
Once they hit those stairs, that's when the emotion kicks in. That's when it becomes real.
Suiting up, every man and woman carrying with them the name of a fallen member on their turnouts and a biography to match.
We have firefighters now that weren't even alive at the time or they were in elementary school, so this is another mechanism for us to educate those folks and really never forget.
This tradition in Sacramento drawing fire personnel from across hundreds of miles, and every dollar raised goes straight to the FDNY Widows and Orphans Fund. Continuing to support those who gave everything and their families, but also heavy on the minds of the many here, those who continue to die from post-9/11 illnesses. New data from a representing New York City labor union is reporting the number of Ground Zero-related deaths is nearing the number of firefighter personnel lost on the day of the actual attack. only further driving the passion to truly never forget and continuing to support those who gave their all. In Sacramento, Erin Heft, KCRA 3 News.
And the 9/11 Memorial Plaza at Cal Expo in Sacramento is open for another hour. A ceremony was held there this morning. The memorial includes a support beam from the North Tower and a granite sphere in a fountain inscribed with the names of all of the victims.
Honor those that served, honor those lives that were lost in the best spirit of what we as Americans did in those days after 9/11. We came together as a country. We came together based on our values of freedom, of democracy, of individual rights, of understanding what it was to be an American because our country was attacked on our soil. And we stepped up to serve the country.
The reality is that when I was talking to a high school a couple months ago as a keynote speaker and was talking about Ground Zero, about patriotism in America, they looked at me because they hadn't even been born yet. They didn't know 9/11. That's why these ceremonies are so important. But I did connect with them.
There are also memorials to the flight that crashed into the Pentagon and the one that crashed in Shanksville. 9/11 changed airport security in this country, like screenings and restrictions that we still follow to this day. And today's Sacramento International Airport marked the day. In Terminal A, there was a moment of silence today. A viewer sent us these photos. There's also a small tribute on an easel that you can take a look at and read. In addition to the nearly 3,000 people who died in the attacks, more than 4,000 people have died from 9/11 related illnesses.